Hello, welcome to Mace Labs. I'm Terry Mace, and today we're going to be starting a new project. Today we're going to start building gamingseeds.com. Gamingseeds.com is a website for users to submit, share, and discover seeds for procedurally generated games such as Minecraft and Sid Meier's Civilization. The goal for today is simply to set up a new project. We're going to create a GitHub repo, we're going to create a MVC .NET project, and we're going to create a unit test project for that MVC project. Okay, first things first is we're going to start a new repository. The reason we're using Git is because Git gives us version history, so we'll be able to track changes in our code base over time. It allows branching, so we can have simultaneous development, and also, should we ever need to, it will allow us to roll back to a previous commit in the history. Not only that, GitHub also allows us to use GitHub Actions, which later on in the project I plan on using to both test and deploy the code. So now let's create that repository. So I'm going to give the repository a name. So go Gaming Seeds. For the description, I'll just give the URL for now. So gamingseeds.com. I'm going to leave that as private. Gonna add a README. Always good practice to include a README. Usually you want to include at least how to get the project started for anybody new that's coming onto the project. Next, I'm going to add a gitignore file. A gitignore file is a very important file. It tells Git which files within your project you want to exclude from version history. .NET projects generate a lot of build and temporary files which we don't want included in our repository. So what I'd always recommend doing here for any kind of .NET project is just to come to the templates and search for Visual Studio. Now, I'm not going to be using Visual Studio for this project, but this is hands down the best template for any .NET project. So I'm going to select that. For the license, I'll pick an MIT license, even though this is a private repo. I'm going to be sharing snippets from the repo on YouTube, so I'll make an MIT license so it can be freely reused. And now I'm going to hit the Create Repository button. Now that has created a new repository. We can see it's called Gaming Seeds. We've got 3 files within our project. We've got the gitignore, our license, and our README. And then we can see our README at the bottom. So now that we have a repository, it currently only lives on github.com. For us to be able to develop against it, we're going to need a copy of it on our own local machine. So to do that, I'm going to click on this green drop down that says code, and I'm going to copy the HTTPS URL. And then you've got a few ways you can do this. You can do it through the command line, or you can do it like I do using a Git client. There's lots of Git clients out there, Git Kraken, GitHub Desktop. The one that I personally use is Git Fork. So I'm going to open up Git Fork, and I'm going to go File, Close. And now because that URL is in my clipboard, it's conveniently already pasted this in here. And then I can just select where I want this project to be saved to and what name I want to give it. I'm not going to change anything there, so I'm just going to clone it. Now that that is finished cloning, if I go to the location I told it to save it at, we'll see that the folder is being created and all of the files within my repository now exist on my machine. Now that we have a copy of the repo on our local machine, we can come to your IDE of choice. I'm going to be using Rider, and we can start our solution. So I'm going to create a new empty solution. The reason I like to create an empty solution rather than going straight into the MVC project is because I like the convention to have a source and a test folder. And the default templates just don't support that. So we're going to create an empty solution and then add our projects in individually. So we're going to give the solution a name. We'll call the solution Gaming Seeds. And then we're going to click Create. So now our empty solution is being created, and we can see in the Solution Explorer on the left here that it is completely empty. There's 0 projects, there's no folders or files. But we know that there are a few files in this solution, we just can't see them. We know that there's the git ignore, and we know that there is a readme. So for ease of access and for visibility of anybody else working on here, I like to include those within the project. So to do that, first I'm going to add a new solution folder, and I'm just going to call this solution items. We now have that folder, and I'm going to right click it and go add, and add an existing item, and I'm going to add the git ignore. We can now see this, and I'm going to add the readme too. Like I say, this will just make access a lot easier and make them far more visible and easier to update. If we come back to our Git client now, what we'll see is we have our solution file being added. This is a local change, but we also have a bunch of JetBrains Rider specific files included as well. I don't particularly care about these files, so I'm just going to quickly update my git ignore to exclude those as well. So back to Rider, come to our git ignore, and I'll just add it to the bottom. And there's already a nice section here, but I'll just add the entire idea folder. Save that, and if we come back to our Git client, what we'll see now is that we only have two changes. We have the solution file which we've created, and we have the change of adding the idea folder. So what we're going to do now is commit those changes. So let's commit the git ignore. So we're just going to say that we are excluding idea folder. Commit that, and then let's commit our solution. So created solution, and we'll commit that. Now, as a best practice, anytime you've made any meaningful change, you want to commit that change. This will document your changes, making it easier to understand the history of changes over time. It will also make it much easier to roll back to a specific point in time as well. If I was to show every single time that I committed a change, it would get very tedious. So from this point on, I'm not going to show that I'm committing, but just know that I am indeed committing changes very regularly. Cool, so coming back to our solution, I personally like the convention of having a source and a test folder. So I'm going to create those folders now. Add new solution folder, and we'll create a source folder, and we'll do one for a test folder too. Now, even though we've created these solution folders, if we actually look in the repo itself, we'll see that those folders don't exist. It's a little bit of a gotcha. Those solution folders only exist in the solution. They don't actually exist in the repo. Personally, I find that quite confusing. I like my repo to replicate the same structure as my solution. So what I'm going to do is create those folders, the same ones that I created in my solution. And once I do that, anything I add to the solution folder will actually appear in the equivalent repo folder. Okay, now let's add our MVC project. So I'm going to come to my solution folder. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to go to add new project. I'm going to make sure I've got web selected on the project type. And I'm going to look down the list of templates until I see MVC. I'm going to give the project a project name. I'm going to call the project Gaming Seeds. So the same project name as the solution name. For the target framework, I'm going to pick the latest version of .NET, which is .NET 9. Make sure it's on C#. And we're not going to worry about any kind of authentication at this point. We'll add that in later. But for now, we'll just keep it as simple as possible. And so I'm going to hit create. Okay, now we can see in our source folder, we have a Gaming Seeds project with a bunch of folders and files being added. This should work out of the box, so let's run it and see. So I'm going to hit the debug button, top right hand corner, let that start up. And now we can see that's running. We've got a home page. It has a privacy page. It's not a lot to it at this time, but this is our starting point. This is what we will build from. The next thing we're going to do is add a test project. As we build out this solution, anytime there's any kind of complex logic, we want to write tests of that to make sure that we don't inadvertently break it at some point later on down the line. So I'm going to come to my test directory. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to go add new project. I'm going to make sure that unit test is selected from the project type. Let's give this a name. So we're going to call this gaming seeds dot unit tests. I'm going to make sure it's going into the test directory. Framework's going to be .NET 9 again. Language C#, and then the type. We've got a few options here. This is unit test project, so we could use NUnit, MS Test, or XUnit. I'm going to go with XUnit simply because in my professional career I found that most companies use XUnit. It's more widely used than any of the others. So let's create this. Cool. So we've now got a gaming seeds.unit test project here. So we can see we've got a unit test 1 class that's been added. In this class we've got a single test. This test itself doesn't actually do anything. But let's just show that we can run tests if we wanted to. So generally speaking, you want to arrange, you want to set up your tests in an arrange act assert format. This is a very good way to organize your tests. So let's say we've got x which is equal to 1. We've got y which is equal to 2. We're going to add those together. So the expected result here is 3. Now in our act, let's actually act upon those. So let's say var actual result is equal to x plus y. And then we can do our assertion, and we can say that our expected and actual results should be equal. So now let's run this test. Just give that a second to run. And there we are. We can see that that test has passed. Just to prove that it's not false positive, let's just change the value here and rerun it. And now we see that our test has failed. Okay, so in this video, we have created a GitHub repository. We've cloned that repository down onto our own machine. We've created a solution. In that solution, we have added an MVC project and a unit test project. We've seen that the MVC project runs locally, and we've also shown that we can run the unit tests. That's going to wrap up this video. In the next video, we're going to create a GitHub action to run those tests in a pipeline and also deploy that code to a server. If you like this video, if you want to follow along with the developments of gamingseeds.com, please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.